The rain tapped gently against the enormous glass windows of the top-floor office, painting streaks across the city skyline below. From this height, the entire metropolis looked alive. Cars weaving through slick streets, neon signs reflecting in puddles, and skyscrapers lit up like stars. For most, it was breathtaking. For Ethan Cole, it was just another reminder of how far he stood above everyone else, and how alone he truly felt up here. At only 35, Ethan was one of the youngest self-made CEOs in the country. He had built his company from scratch, turning an ambitious idea into a global empire. Magazines called him the Golden Visionary. Investors called him the man with the Midas touch. Yet when the office doors closed and the applause faded, Ethan was simply a single father trying his best to raise a little girl in a world that demanded more of him than he sometimes had left to give. His daughter, Lily, was 7 years old. She was a whirlwind of energy wrapped in curls that never stayed neat, with big brown eyes that always seemed to hold 1,000 questions. Ethan adored her. She was his anchor, his reason for enduring 18-hour workdays, and the only one who could make his cold, steel office feel like a home when she visited. But raising her without her mother was harder than Ethan ever admitted. His wife, Lily's mother, had passed away years ago, when Lily was still too young to remember. Ethan had buried his grief beneath his work, promising himself that he would protect his daughter from every struggle, every disappointment. But no matter how many millions he earned, money couldn't fill the gaps. Lily needed time, patience, guidance. Things Ethan often struggled to provide between board meetings and investor calls. That was why today mattered more than he would let anyone know. He needed a tutor, someone who could not only help Lily with her studies but also offer her the kind of attention and stability she craved. The last few tutors had failed spectacularly. Some had been too strict, turning every lesson into a battle of wills. Others had been overwhelmed by Lily's endless curiosity and mischief. Each one left Ethan feeling more frustrated and Lily more disappointed. So when his assistant informed him of a new candidate scheduled for today, Ethan felt cautious. Hopeful, yes, but cautious. The heavy office doors opened with a soft click, and she walked in. Her name was Maya Bennett. She wasn't what Ethan expected. Most of the tutors he'd interviewed had arrived in sharp suits, armed with resumes thicker than textbooks. But Maya looked different. She wore a modest navy blue dress, simple yet graceful. Her shoes weren't designer. Her bag was worn but neatly kept. She carried a single folder, its corners frayed from use. What struck Ethan most wasn't her appearance. It was her eyes. There was a gentleness in them, a warmth that felt out of place in his sterile, high-powered office. She looked a little nervous but also determined, as though she had walked into rooms like this before and refused to let them intimidate her. "Mr. Cole," she greeted softly, offering a polite smile before glancing toward the little girl sitting in the corner. "And you must be Lily." Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. He wasn't impressed yet. The hiring process was supposed to be flawless, yet somehow, Maya had slipped through. Was she really qualified, or had his assistant made an error in the rush? Before he could question her, Maya knelt down, lowering herself to Lily's eye level. She didn't start with credentials or experience. She started with connection. "I brought something for you," Maya said, carefully pulling a small box from her bag. She opened it to reveal a puzzle with bright, colorful pieces. "Do you like puzzles?" Lily's eyes widened instantly. None of the previous tutors had thought to bring something fun. They had all arrived with schedules, strict rules, and lectures about discipline. But this woman, this stranger, had brought curiosity to the table. "I love puzzles," Lily exclaimed, hopping off her chair. Within seconds, the two of them were on the floor, spreading out the pieces. Lily's laughter filled the room, the kind of unguarded, joyful sound Ethan hadn't heard in weeks. Ethan frowned slightly, though his chest tightened at the same time. This wasn't the professional, polished start he had imagined. Wasn't this supposed to be an academic evaluation? But then, he noticed something. For the first time, Lily wasn't shy. Usually, she withdrew from strangers, hiding behind Ethan's chair or clamming up with short answers. But now, she was leaning forward, asking Maya questions, laughing at her silly comments, and even correcting her when she pretended to put puzzle pieces in the wrong place. It was remarkable. Interesting, Ethan murmured under his breath, trying not to reveal too much. Maya glanced up at him for just a moment, as though to check whether she had crossed some invisible line. Ethan's expression remained guarded, his features sharp, unreadable. But the truth was, he was intrigued. Could it be luck? Coincidence? Or had he just witnessed the rare spark of someone who understood children in a way money couldn't buy? The rain outside thickened, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and silver. But inside Ethan's office, the cold atmosphere softened. A space that usually echoed with corporate urgency was now filled with something far rarer: warmth. Ethan sat in silence, studying them. Maya didn't just teach, she connected. She didn't just instruct, she listened. And Lily, she was glowing. It left Ethan with an uncomfortable question lingering in his mind. Had his assistant truly hired the wrong tutor? Or had fate just handed him the right one in disguise? The following morning, Ethan was already awake before dawn, though sleep had been thin. His mansion was silent, the kind of silence that could feel oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. He walked down the long hallway toward Lily's room, adjusting his cufflinks as he went. He expected to find her still tangled in her blankets. Instead, she was wide awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, holding her stuffed rabbit tightly to her chest. "Daddy," she said as soon as she saw him, her eyes bright, "is Miss Maya coming back today?" Ethan gave her a measured look, trying not to show the smile tugging at his lips. "She's coming this afternoon. But remember, sweetheart, it's just a trial. We'll see if it works out." Lily shook her head with the unshakable certainty only children had. "It will work out. I just know it." Her confidence unsettled him. He wanted her happy, yes, but he also wanted her protected. He had spent years shielding her from disappointments. He didn't want this woman to walk into their lives only to vanish again, leaving Lily's hope crushed in the process. By the time afternoon arrived, the house was alive with quiet anticipation. When the doorbell rang, Lily flew down the staircase before Ethan could stop her. Maya stepped into the grand foyer, looking out of place against the marble floors and the towering chandelier. Yet she carried herself with ease. Her simple dress and worn leather bag contrasted sharply with the polished elegance around her. Still, she smiled as though the environment did not intimidate her at all. "Hello, Lily," she greeted warmly, bending down to admire the pink ribbon in Lily's hair. Lily grinned, slipping her small hand into Maya's and tugging her eagerly toward the playroom. Ethan followed, keeping his distance, watching closely. He had seen countless people enter this house: investors, tutors, household staff, and most of them stiffened, swallowed by the grandeur of the place. Maya, however, seemed more interested in Lily's crayon drawings taped to the wall than in the art pieces that lined the hallway. Once inside the playroom, Maya gently suggested they start with a book Lily had been struggling with. Lily opened it hesitantly, stumbling over the longer words. Ethan braced himself for the inevitable correction, the stained voice of yet another tutor. But instead, Maya pulled out a notebook from her bag and began sketching quick, playful drawings to match the story. She turned the words into silly characters with exaggerated faces, and soon Lily was laughing instead of frowning, sounding out the words with joy. From his position in the doorway, Ethan folded his arms, trying not to reveal the surprise softening his face. This was not how lessons had ever gone before. Normally, they ended with frustration, sometimes tears. But now his daughter was glowing with excitement, her small voice carrying pride instead of dread. When Maya looked up and caught him watching, there was no smugness in her expression, no attempt to impress him. Only calm assurance, as though she expected nothing more than for Lily to keep enjoying herself. Later, when Lily ran off to grab a toy she wanted to show, Ethan finally spoke. "Your approach is unconventional." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "Children don't learn from pressure, Mr. Cole. They learn from connection. If they feel safe, if they feel seen, they open up. That's when learning really begins." "Connection doesn't build discipline," Ethan countered, his voice sharp but even. Lily will need structure if she's going to thrive. The world won't make allowances for her just because she's a child. With respect, Maya replied, her tone steady but not unkind. She's not the world's responsibility yet. She's yours, and what she needs most is to feel understood. The structure will come, but if she loses her love for learning now, it will be much harder to give it back to her later. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Very few people ever spoke to him that way. In his world, most people either feared him or worshipped his success. But this woman, this tutor, stood in front of him and simply told him the truth as she saw it. That evening, after Maya had left, Ethan found himself alone in his study. A storm brewed outside, raindrops racing down the tall windows. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, the only one of his late wife he kept visible. She had carried the same warmth in her eyes, the same way of lighting up a room without trying. He swallowed hard, memories pressing down like weights he thought he had buried. He reminded himself of the promise he had made years ago, never again. He had poured his love once into a woman, only to watch her vanish from his life far too soon. He couldn't let himself fall into that vulnerability again. His heart was locked away, and that was how it had to stay, for his sake and for Lily's. And yet, the sound of Lily's laughter that afternoon lingered in his mind. The sight of her leaning over her book, proud of every word she managed, filled him with an ache he hadn't felt in years. Could it really be a coincidence? Or was this woman changing something in their lives that he hadn't realized needed changing? 2 days later, Lily begged him to let Maya stay for dinner after her lessons. Ethan hesitated, torn between caution and the look of hope in his daughter's eyes. Finally, he agreed. Dinner was simple: roasted chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread from the local bakery. The long dining table that usually felt empty and cold was suddenly filled with chatter. Lily spoke non-stop, sharing stories, showing off drawings, asking Maya endless questions. Maya listened attentively, never rushing her, never dismissing even the smallest detail. Ethan sat back, silent at first, observing the rhythm between them. Slowly, against his will, he found himself drawn into the warmth. He even laughed once, a genuine laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years, when Lily recounted a particularly silly story. The sound startled him as much as it delighted Lily. Maya glanced at him briefly, her lips curving into a small smile, almost as though she had noticed how rare the moment was. Later, as he walked her to the door, Ethan said quietly, "You've made quite an impression." "I'm not here to impress you, Mr. Cole," Maya replied, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here for Lily. She deserves someone who believes in her." Their eyes met for a lingering second, and something passed between them that neither acknowledged aloud. When the door closed and the echo faded into silence, Ethan realized he was unsettled. He had hired her to be a tutor, but she was already becoming something far more complicated. The following week slipped into a new rhythm, one Ethan hadn't expected. Each afternoon, Maya arrived on time with her simple bag and calm presence. Every time she walked through the door, Lily lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. The little girl would tug Maya toward her room or the study before Ethan could even greet her, chattering about the things she wanted to show that day. For Ethan, it was strange. He was used to control, used to running boardrooms, managing empires, dictating outcomes. But in this small corner of his life, he found himself observing, watching, letting someone else take the lead. And as much as he told himself to remain detached, it was getting harder each day. On the third afternoon, Ethan paused outside the study where Maya and Lily were working. He leaned against the doorframe, hidden from view, listening to their voices. "Sound it out," Maya encouraged gently. "Take your time." Lily stumbled over a tricky word, her voice dropping in frustration. Ethan braced himself for the inevitable tears. But Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of cards she had drawn herself, brightly colored, each with silly faces and doodles. "Look, this is his name now," she said, pointing at the word Lily struggled with. "Sir Gigglesworth. And every time you see it, you have to make a silly face." Lily burst into laughter, trying again with a playful wiggle of her nose. Within minutes, she had conquered the word without realizing it. Ethan couldn't help the small smile tugging at his lips. He hadn't expected this woman to be creative, let alone disarmingly effective. The tutors before her had relied on rigid methods, expensive programs, or reputation. But Maya seemed to rely on nothing more than her patience, her warmth, and her refusal to give up on Lily. When she finally noticed Ethan watching, she didn't flinch or straighten nervously. She simply smiled and gestured for him to join them. He shook his head, stepping back. But the moment lingered with him, long after she had gone for the evening. That night, Ethan found himself staring at the city skyline from his study. He thought about all the people who had come and gone in their lives since Lily was born. Tutors, nannies, employees, they had passed through like seasons. None of them had left an imprint. Until now. The following day brought an unexpected complication. A major deal was on the verge of collapsing, and Ethan spent the morning in tense phone calls with board members. By the time Maya arrived, his mood was sharp, his patience thin. He joined them halfway through the lesson, briefcase still in hand, tie loosened from the stress of the day. "How is she doing?" he asked, his tone clipped. "She's doing great," Maya replied evenly, not rising to his sharpness. "We're working on her comprehension today, and she's making real progress." Ethan walked over, glancing at Lily's workbook. "Her handwriting is sloppy," he remarked, more critical than he intended. Lily's smile faltered, her shoulders hunching. Maya's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Lily. "Actually, I her small smile returning. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. He hadn't meant to discourage his daughter. He only wanted her to do well. But the look on her face when she thought she had true. Ethan had built an empire on perfection, on demanding the best from himself and everyone around him. But he had forgotten that children weren't employees, and his daughter wasn't a project to perfect. He didn't respond, only tightened his jaw. But that evening, long after Maya left, her words echoed in his head. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, the lessons turned into something more. Ethan began joining them at the table, first only to observe, then to participate. He read passages aloud with Lily, sometimes stumbling on purpose to make her laugh, and watched as Maya guided them both with quiet ease. One evening, when a storm knocked out the power, they lit candles around the playroom. Instead of canceling the lesson, Maya turned it into a game. Shadow puppets on the wall, stories spun from their shapes. Lily squealed with delight, clapping her hands, begging for more. Ethan found himself laughing too, the sound strange and unfamiliar in his own ears. When the power returned hours later, the house felt warmer than it had in years. It was during one of those evenings, while Lily colored at the table, that Ethan found himself speaking words he hadn't planned. "You're different from the others," he said quietly. Maya looked up, surprised. "Different how?" He hesitated, his eyes lingering on Lily before meeting hers. "They were here for a paycheck. You're here for her." Maya's gaze softened. Children can always tell when someone truly cares. Lily doesn't need perfect. She needs presence. That's something no resume can teach. Ethan studied her for a long moment, unsettled by how much truth she carried in those simple words. He had built his life on logic, strategy, control. Yet here was a woman who dismantled all of it with nothing but kindness. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan poured himself a glass of scotch and sat alone in the dimly lit study. He thought of Maya's laughter echoing down the hall, of Lily's glowing smile whenever she walked into the room. He thought of the fleeting warmth that had begun to creep back into his home, into his life. He told himself it was dangerous, that he couldn't let his heart wander into places it didn't belong. But deep down, he already knew the truth. Maya wasn't just Lily's tutor anymore. She was becoming the reason he remembered what it felt like to live. The end of summer brought with it a shift in the air. The long days began to shorten, the evenings cooler, and Lily's lessons with Maya had transformed into a part of life so natural that Ethan could no longer imagine their home without it. Maya had a way of filling silence without noise. She didn't chatter endlessly or impose herself. Instead, she created an atmosphere where Lily felt safe to speak. the lines of responsibility carved deep. But she also saw something else, a man who had sacrificed more than he admitted. Lily dozed off after her medicine, and Maya found herself in the kitchen, making tea. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her with quiet intensity. "You act like you belong here," he said softly. Maya froze, unsure if it was a compliment or criticism. "I didn't mean to overstep." He shook his head quickly. "That's not what I meant. It's just, when you're here, everything feels different. Better, like this house isn't so cold anymore." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. The air between them thrummed with the weight of words they didn't dare say. Before anything else could happen, Lily called out weakly from the other room, breaking the moment. Maya hurried to her side, and Ethan followed, silently grateful and disappointed all at once. Later that week, Ethan invited Maya to join them for an afternoon outing. It wasn't planned. Lily had begged to go to the park, and Ethan had asked Maya to come along. They ended up sitting on a bench while Lily ran toward the swings. "She's happier now," Ethan said quietly, his eyes tracking his daughter. "That's because of you." Maya shook her head. "That's because she has a father who cares enough to try." He looked at her, his jaw tight. "I've made mistakes. I buried myself in work, thinking money would be enough. That as long as she had comfort, she wouldn't miss what I couldn't give." His voice dropped. "I was wrong." Maya reached for his hand without thinking, squeezing it gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." The simple touch sent a jolt through him, and he didn't let go right away. For a long moment, they just sat there, their hands entwined, until Lily's laughter pulled them back to reality. That night, when Ethan tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that made his heart stop. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes half closed, "why don't you marry Miss Maya?" He froze, caught completely off guard. "What makes you say that?" "Because she makes you smile," Lily murmured sleepily. "And she makes me happy. That's what families do, right?" Ethan kissed her forehead, his throat too tight to answer. Later, as he walked Maya to the door, her expression told him she'd heard Lily's question. Neither of them mentioned it, but the unspoken possibility lingered in the air. The following days only deepened their bond. Maya became more than a tutor. She became part of their daily rhythm. She stayed for meals, joined in small traditions, and slowly, the walls Ethan had built began to crumble. But as feelings grew stronger, so did the risks. One evening, during a company charity gala, Ethan spotted Maya across the ballroom. She wasn't there as a guest. She had been invited to help with the children's activities. Yet in her simple dress, she outshone everyone in the room. Ethan couldn't keep his eyes off her. When their paths crossed near the refreshment table, he leaned in slightly. "You look incredible." Maya blushed, lowering her gaze. "You shouldn't say that, hey." "Why not?" he murmured. "Because people are watching. Because this isn't supposed to happen." But Ethan didn't care who saw. For the first time in years, he wanted something for himself. He wanted her. As the night wore on, whispers began. People noticed the way Ethan's eyes followed Maya, the way she seemed anchored to his side. A colleague even pulled him aside, raising an eyebrow. "Careful, Ethan. You know how rumors spread." Ethan brushed it off, but Maya wasn't so easily convinced. When the evening ended, and he offered to drive her home, she hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble for you," she said softly as they stood outside the car. "You're not trouble," Ethan insisted. "You're the first good thing that's happened to me in years." Her resolve wavered, but she shook her head. "We have to be careful. For Lily's sake. For yours." He wanted to argue, to tell her that he didn't care about rules or whispers, but he saw the worry in her eyes. So he let her go, watching her walk away, every step pulling at his heart. The next few weeks were filled with quiet struggle. They kept their feelings under control, keeping conversations light, staying within the lines. But late at night, when Ethan sat alone in his office, he replayed every look, every touch, every moment they had shared. He knew he couldn't keep living like this. One stormy night, fate forced their hand. Lily had a nightmare and rushed into Maya's room. She had been staying over more often by then, helping through busy work weeks. Ethan found them together, Maya comforting his daughter, her arms wrapped around her protectively. When Lily finally fell back asleep, Ethan lingered in the doorway. "She needs you," he whispered. Maya looked up, her eyes meeting his. "And what about you?" His answer was immediate, raw. "I need you too." The silence stretched, thick and heavy with truth. And for the first time, Maya didn't look away.